Howdy do, Reject Nation. I'm Greg Alba here. This past weekend, I watched a little film, called Bad Times at the El Royale, which is sweeping the box office right now, so you know this video is gonna get just as many views as our First Man review. Yeah. But hey, fuck it. I watched it, so let's talk about it. Before going into this, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been following us on the Stardust app. It's a free app to download, free app to use. We post on there weekly 30-second reactions for any film, TV show, or trailer. A lot of them are like micro sketches and such.
I didn't actually see this movie, but Greg thought it was pretty great, so check it out.
So yeah, link in the description box, probably the pinned comment. Go ahead, download the app right now and follow us. But let's talk about this movie. I personally have really been looking forward to this film a lot. If you've seen any of our trailer reactions, you would know that. And I too, like the rest of the film community, am a big fan of Drew Goddard's work. I actually got into Buffy this past year, been breezing through those seasons, and I really loved his work on Daredevil. And yes, I really like the movie Cabin in the Woods. And knowing he's writing and directing this film and working with an ensemble of this caliber of talent got me very much excited. I really enjoyed the hell out of it. I did. I want to make that clear before you hear some criticism. It does take a while to find its momentum, and after leaving the theater, it became very apparent that this film is probably not going to click in the same way for everyone, at least to the degree of what people are hoping for, because it's a weird film. And if I know critics, I know everyone's going to be comparing this movie to the works of Quentin Tarantino. This film feels exactly like Kill Bill Volume 1. No, it doesn't. My first thought after leaving the theater was it really felt like the movie Identity, except without that weird twist at the end, meets Tarantino's Hateful Eight, which is like meeting Reservoir Dogs and meeting a lot of different segments of Tarantino movies. And this movie's specific plot is difficult to describe without giving the story away, because like I remember being like 15-20 minutes in going, what exactly is this movie about? So I'm just gonna read from what IMDb says, because you know how I do. 7 strangers, each with a secret to bury, meet at Lake Tahoe's El Royale, a rundown hotel with a dark past. Over the course of one fateful night, everyone will have a last shot at redemption before everything goes to hell. Yeah, I guess that's a pretty fair way to describe the movie, yeah. What makes this film work so well for me specifically, because I'm talking about my point of view, because the opinions are subjective, is also the area that I noticed some people are kind of complaining about. And I'd really underline that word kind of, because it's in relation to the characters / performances. Because everyone in this film is amazing, and I think everyone would agree that there really isn't one weak link in this movie. And I really like the approach Drew Goddard in general takes with his characters, but specifically this movie. I can't really go into depth or else it'd spoil the hell out of the movie. But what I thought was pretty cool, and some can maybe considered a little gimmicky, I personally didn't. Each character clearly resembles a specific type of identity or personality from the 1960s, and it always comes into play. I actually heard an interview with Drew Goddard where he was basically saying that when he works on a script, he doesn't really think about the plot, he doesn't think about structure or anything of those things. What he mainly thinks about and puts all his homework into is the characters, their history, and he lets that affect the plot. He lets that determine how everything will unfold. And in this movie especially, it really shows. That type of approach does show. Because it's one of those movies where pretty much every character that appears on screen, almost every one of them, you get to see their backstory. And it's usually not upon the initial introduction. Usually you have a perception of who they are from their introduction, and then later on you get their backstory, which leads to a lot of twists, a lot of turns, a lot of surprises, some deaths here or there, and it really does let the plot unfold through learning who the characters are. Other than the fact that this film is very dialogue heavy, another thing that makes it very Tarantino-esque, you know how Tarantino likes to break his films up into chapters, like how he does with Inglourious Basterds, Hateful Eight, and Kill Bill, and then he hops around time, doesn't tell stories in a linear way. Linear is a word used to describe structure a lot of times from screenwriters, I noticed, so I'm using that word. But the approach that Drew Goddard takes here, instead of calling it chapters, no. He calls it like room 1, and then you focus on that character and let the plot go. And then room 5, you hop around the characters based off what room they're in. So it makes for an experience where you're like, I have to really pay attention to everything that's going on. And don't get me wrong, I would love to go into the depth of these characters. One of my favorite things to do when talking about reviews is doing a real big analysis of each character's performance, but doing that here in a non-spoiler review would ultimately spoil the movie for you if I were to do that, and the trailers do a really good job at actually hiding those things. Because a big part of the fun of this movie is being unsure where the plot is going, then learning learning who these guys are, and then that advances the plot. I know it's been a few days, film's been out, why not just do a spoiler talk? I know what people are saying. But it opened at number 7, so a lot of people are not watching this movie, and what I'm hoping for is that by the end of this review, or maybe even at this point, you're encouraged to go check this movie out because I think it deserves more box office numbers. These films are about making money and nothing else matters. Dakota Johnson does a great job in this film. I thought she was perfect in those 50 Shades movies. Wow. Mwah. But man, is she slightly better in this? No, I don't like those movies, but she's great in this film. She's got a real tough edge to her, and she actually has a line in this movie that generated, and it's intentional, but generated one of the biggest laughs from the theater. Jon Hamm is also very effective in the movie. Early on in the film, he gets a lot of monologuing to do, and man, he handles those lines. Lewis Pullman plays a guy named Miles. He's the dude who's watching over almost every area of this hotel. And he has one of the more emotional roles in the movie, but I kind of feel like everyone's overlooking his work in the film, but he does a great job. And I think the characters that everyone's gonna be most gravitated towards are Jeff Bridges and Cynthia Erivo. Jeff Bridges early on in this movie had a scene that was so effective that it made me tear up. I know, me crying to rare occasion, right? I never talk about that. And Cynthia Erivo is the one character that's probably the most relatable and is arguably the lead. If like this is an ensemble piece for sure, but if there's one character I had to narrow down to who's the lead character, it would be her, and damn is she good. I don't know another film I've seen her in. I know she's gonna be in Widows later this year. It made me want to see more of her. She's damn good. And Chris Hemsworth is not in this film for most of it. If you don't know anything about this film, you don't know Chris Hemsworth in it, you won't feel the build up to Chris Hemsworth. But if you know Chris Hemsworth in this movie, there is that build up as an audience viewer going, when's Chris Hemsworth gonna show up? And whoa! Oh man, skipping in my voice there. When Chris Hemsworth is on screen, he is a mother effing fucking scene stealer. He's charming, he's entertaining. At times, he is downright scary. He is multi-layered. You can't take your eyes off of him when he's on screen. He's not in it through most, but he's important, and when he's there, wildly effective. And easily the most intense scene in this entire film. This movie's pretty long, but the most intense scene is one of his main scenes. Length of movies don't really bother me, but I do think that this film is I feel like a lot of people might have stronger opinions about this. I think the film is semi-hindered by its pacing. When you watch the trailer for this film, you're gonna expect a really fast-paced, snappy, perhaps funny, like crime thriller. It's not really that funny. It definitely could have been snappy. If there's one argument I'll agree with it, I don't know if everyone's saying this, but I imagine people would feel this way, is that it probably could have used a little bit more of a snappy pacing. Because there is something a little bit off about it, especially in the first 30 minutes of this film. Because there's a lot of dialogue happening, and it seems like the pacing and snappiness, it seems like it's all there on paper, on script, but there's something in the direction where it's not quite feeling the snappiness, it's not quite feeling the energy that I think the film wants you to feel. Because like I said, it seems to all be on paper, and I get the impression Drew Goddard might have restrained himself a bit too much in terms of just letting loose and having a lot of fun throughout the whole film. Especially because there's some reveal at the end, and a lot of this movie where it could seem a little strange, especially. There's a lot of randomness in this movie. The film starts off, and from what the trailer tells you, it would appear everyone, if not everyone, most are at this hotel for the exact same reason. As the film progresses, you find out most are here for entirely different reasons. They just all happen to come together here on this night. That wasn't so much of a criticism on my end until after I was leaving the theater, and I was like, this is kind of weird how all of these completely different, and that's where it kind of feels like identity to me, you know, before that weird plot twist happened in the movie. And there's this like ending reveal that happens that I think would have felt a lot less cheesy and a lot less like, well, that's convenient. And I probably wouldn't have felt that way if the film's pacing had a little bit more of a sense of fun underlying throughout the entirety. However, I really don't want this to communicate as I thought this film was slow or I thought it was boring, because I really didn't feel that way. I was very much engaged and pulled in throughout. And there were a lot of moments where I was like, oh shit, that's cool. Also, my girlfriend had a comment, and if I don't mention that she made the comment, then I'm gonna get crap about it. I know you're watching because I'm forcing you to watch my video because I'm doing this by myself. She had a comment that ultimately I do agree with, that even though the characters are obviously well thought out and the performances are insanely solid, this story probably would have worked better as a mini-series as opposed to a feature film. Just because some plot points are left hanging and some are left in the way of you going, yeah, we don't need the answers, just leave it a mystery. It kind of works better that way. Then there are others where you're like, they just didn't didn't have time to finish up that storyline. Because there's a weird feeling too where when some of the characters die, it's effective, it works for the plot. It might just be because the actors are so good that I didn't want any of them to actually die. But sometimes when they do die, it does kind of have this like feeling of being a bummer. Like, oh, I just started to learn about their backstory and yada, yada, yada. But like I said, it also works because it creates this sense of anyone can die at any moment. All in all, even though I did feel the pacing could have been a little bit more snappy, I did find it very engaging. I really did enjoy the weird Tarantino-esque structure. I don't know if he invented that structure, but it does feel that way. Of this film, there's plenty of great performances, a lot of nice surprises, a lot of tense moments, and I definitely recommend it, and I hope more people go check this out because it's rare for big studios to make films like this anymore, especially studios that were just bought by Disney. So, you know, help them out. Anyway, guys, did you see Bad Times at the El Royale? Who was your favorite character in the movie? Comment below. Make sure to follow us on the Stardust app. Download right now and use it. Subscribe to the Reject Nation. Click that notification bell because, you know, subscribe buttons kind of suck.